Hi, everyone. I'm going to do a video today on the Book Boost program. I want to talk about how the ads did now that I've crunched the first round of data, talk about some of my thoughts, answer the questions I got from authors who took part, and just generally share a bunch of information. I decided video would be better because I'm tired of typing. I did type a lot of this up, so you can read it if you don't like video. So the first note is I changed the name of this program. It used to be called Book Launch. I changed it to Book Boost. And the reason I did that is I was getting too much confusion where people thought this was only for new books. And I wanted to change it because it could be used for any book. So to start, I had a lot of confusion over what this was. And I want to remind some people, this is a perk to give authors a little bit more promotion on Shepherd. Each founding member gets 1 credit currently per year to use for any of their books to boost it on Shepherd. It is shown across Shepherd in different ad spots based on your genre, topics, and similar authors you pick. So for example, on the bookshelf pages, it's shown in the 3rd spot after the other book, after the 3rd book. On the books like pages, it's shown after the 3rd book. On book pages, it's shown after the 3rd recommendation. And on book recommendation pages, it's shown after the 5th book. And if you browse Shepherd, you'll see these book ads. They say no new book alert. We just use that terminology. It doesn't have to be a new book, and I'll probably adjust it. And it has a clear sponsored message. So just go jump on Shepherd and jump on any list, and you'll see these in those spots. I also will put links in the email to the 4Authors website. It's 4authors.shepherd.com, where we have a full video walkthrough of this feature and a lot more information. So I sent stats to everybody, and I just want to remind people what those stats mean, because a lot of people had questions. Impressions is how many times a reader viewed your book. That means they saw your book cover in your description. Doesn't mean they read your description. It might have meant they just went by your book, glanced at the cover, and that's it. The real world analogy would be somebody walking around a bookstore and they go past a bookshelf where your book is facing out toward them. The next metric is clicks. This is how many times a reader clicked to preview your book, go to the bookstore for your book, or go to a book page at Shepherd for your book if you have one. The real world analogy would be if somebody walks past a bookshelf at a bookstore, sees your book, and picks it up to look at it more closely. CTR, this stands for click-through ratio. And this is basically a way to understand the percentage of people who looked at your book versus clicked on it. So if you say, oh, a book had a 1% click-through ratio, that means that for every 1,000 people that viewed it, 10 readers clicked it. And this is just a terminology to help understand how effective that ad was or what response it was getting. So I hope that's clear. So far we've had 73 ads run that I've crunched data on. There's a link in this email where you can see each one anonymized, so you can kind of see your ad if it's already run and compare it to the others. We had around, I think, 24 nonfiction books. I need to go re-add that in a second. The average click-through rate for all books was 0.1%. The average click-through rate for the top 20% and top 10% of books was around 0.2%. So they did about twice as good as the average. I asked, I've been looking at this data and trying just to understand some different things and see what I want to tweak and all that kind of thing. So what can you take away from the performance of your ad? You shouldn't think that just because another ad performed really well, that yours was necessarily bad. There can be a lot of reasons for it. Sometimes it does come down to the book cover was not clicking with people, the description was not clicking with people for sure. But you also have to remember this is a function of what people are looking for and a lot of other factors. So hit reply if you want to talk to me about it. We can go into a little more detail. But just as one example, if someone is, well, I'll talk about my 4 big takeaways first. So my first takeaway is I might be going too wide with the Book Boost program. Right now, we use the genres, topics, and similar authors to put your book in front of different places. We can go really narrow, but we also go pretty wide. And I've got an example I write about to kind of illustrate this, and I do recommend you read it because it does have some good data. But let's imagine I write billionaire romance books, and I wrote one about a lawyer who's a billionaire and falling in love or whatever. So this ad is going to show up on our billionaire romance bookshelf, of course. But because one of the genres is also romance, it's going to show up in a romance. Those are both great matches. Now, it should get more clicks on the billionaire romance page versus romance, because the people that come to romance might be looking for any other of the subgenres that romance can include. Now, we also do fiction sometimes. So if we have a list that doesn't have a book ad that's a closer target, we sub in fiction books. So that's pretty ineffective. And I might be looking at how can we possibly program that to not show it on general matches that are that broad. The other way that this works is, let's say that I have written this book about a billionaire romance book about a lawyer. We might tag that as topic lawyer. So we would show that on our bookshelf about lawyers. So let's say you land on a page looking for a book about lawyer. Some of those readers are going to be looking for a legal thriller. Some are going to be looking for romance. Some are going to be looking for a nonfiction book, maybe about the law. You never know. And so that's where the CTR gets a lot different, because sure, it's a connection. It's a weaker connection than the closer connections. And this is a lot of what Shepherd is trying to do, is if you have a spectrum of, readers, and over here you have the most likely readers for your book, and here the readers that will never read your book, Shepherd is trying to help you meet those people with this book launch ad. Now, with our book recommendation list, we're trying to help you meet these people, the most targeted, because they're going to be the most interested. So this ad, it could be going too wide, and I'm going to need to think about that. And the second big takeaway I had was I might need to change the ad format to drive more engagement. This is something I've been thinking about for many years. Is online, we sell books the same way in terms of here's the book cover and here's the book description. And I am not sure that that's all that effective. It's just all that we have. And so right now, your book on this ad is being shown next to books that are personally recommended by somebody's face. And it might be that we are getting a slightly less interest because somebody's reading, Mike recommended these 5, billionaire romance books. They look great. And here's an ad for one. That might drive less interest. The other thing, in terms of what would I do around an ad format, I've been playing around some ad formats with interesting facts, for example, for nonfiction authors, maybe meeting the book characters for fiction authors, or more interactive quiz. And the whole idea here is to hook readers more and pull them towards your book so they give it a chance. It still might not click for them. There's plenty of reasons why a book doesn't click for a person. But what we might try to do eventually is change this format to try some other things and see if it drives better reader engagement. And if that didn't make sense, email me, because I think about this a lot and I'm never sure how clear I'm being. So the third big takeaway I had was how small some book niches are and how that helps and hurts you. So this is a big topic, and it's a really interesting one. And I do really recommend, if you only read one thing out of this email, go read this section, because it does have a graph to kind of show you what's the easiest type of marketing and what's the hardest. And if you think about your book, the easiest type of marketing to do that every author, should be doing is advertising to your fan base. And those are people that loved your book and read it, because those people already know you. They're a much easier sell. And hopefully a lot of them are reading all your books, because that's a big way, you kind of build up your audience with your back catalog. The next group is the closest kind of decently sized genre or topics for your book. So these are people that don't know you, but you have a better chance of convincing them to give your book and you a try, because it's close to what they're interested in. So back to the billionaire romance book, this would be billionaire romance readers. If I can get my book in front of them, they'll give it a chance, because that's what they read and that's what they're looking for. Then you go a little bit wider. Then you get something like steamy romance books with some kind of power dynamic. So other subgenres within romance that might be interested in that book. Then you go a little broader, and then you get romance books. And so you say, what is the chance that somebody who's looking for a romance book is going to be specifically interested in a billionaire romance book? That's a little bit bigger. It's going to have less of a CTR and less interest from that group. And then you go bigger, and maybe that's fiction in this case. And that's not even worth marketing to because it's too big. What's the chance somebody looking for a fiction book is also going to be into romance? Very little. And I talk about that a bit. And my worry here is, well, not my worry, I should say, but with Shepherd, doing these ads kind of is trying to target your smallest genre and also go pretty wide. And like I mentioned in the first thing I'm thinking about, we might need to narrow that in, but we'll talk about that. Finally, the fourth takeaway is Shepherd is still very new. We need a lot more traffic. And the reason is readers are very diverse in what they read. And when I was digging into the data on, what people clicked versus what they were looking at and some other factors, it was just very clear, we need to be a lot bigger in order to drive more engagement. And so I'm going to use the Billionaire Romance as an example. So right now we have a Billionaire Romance bookshelf. That means that anybody that comes to that bookshelf is actively looking for Billionaire Romance. In the last 30 days, I think it's only had around 30 visits, 30 total. And that's primarily because that one bookshelf doesn't yet rank on Google for romance billionaire type searches. The bulk of our Billionaire Romance searches are coming in from list. So somebody might write the 5 best billionaire, romance books that you can swoon over, and people are hitting that less, but it's still a very small niche. Even on Google as a whole, there might only be, using tools I have, about 8,000 searches a month on billionaire romance books. And so this is a big part of the challenge Shepherd faces, and why this takes a long time is it can take up to 2 or 3 years or even longer to rank for these high volume competitive searches. And so a lot of what we're doing is working that way. But we just launched, for example, our Billionaire Romance page about 9 months ago. So it's going to take us a lot of time to start getting more and more readers. Across the whole site, on a very rough estimate, I would say that we had 10,000 readers coming to us out of the 400,000 for the month who are looking for romance books. Probably a little higher because I wasn't able to count book and book-like pages. But that's my point here is there's a lot of sub niches where you're going to perform better, but getting access to those people is hard. And that's a lot what Shepherd is trying to do here. Shepherd is trying to build a platform that pulls those readers in so we can help authors meet them. Because right now, if you go search for billionaire romance books, the results are either driving more people to Amazon, where the only way is to buy ads, or it's on Goodreads, which is unusable for that section, or it's on articles by big publisher like Forbes or other people, which are showing off 10 books, and they're generally, written not by a human, unfortunately, at this point. So this is a big reason why over the next 3 years, I'm trying very hard, not only to go after these search terms like I have for many years, but it's also to expand into email so that we can build a direct relationship with readers so that they can say, hey, send me romance books, send me billionaire romance books, and we can send them and involve them more in this. The second thing is also eventually expanding to social media. We've got a lot of steps before we can kind of do that in a concrete way. But those are the big takeaways I took. So what changes am I considering because of this data? I am considering, like I said, scaling the matching back so that we're going a little more narrow and cutting off some of those broad matches. That would mean that you would see lower impressions, and a higher CTR, hopefully. I am also considering switching the Book Boost program to persistent ads. This is something I've thought about for a while, but basically, as long as you're a member, it would run your ads, and we would change it to be very targeted to only, we'd have to rewrite some of that to only be like very targeted. So if you write a billionaire romance book, it's only going to match to billionaire romance books, similar authors, and very tight focus. So you don't get that broad stuff. So it might be like you only meet 25 readers a day, but they're going to be the ones most likely interested to you, and we'll just shrug off all the broad ones to give to other people, which won't be broad for them, of course. So that's one thing I'm considering. And I'm also, like I mentioned, considering changing the ad format to try to make it something more dynamic and drive more engagement. And this would be something like an interesting fact about a book. It might say, one I've been playing with is a fact about, say you're an author who wrote a World War II memoir, and you might share a fact about World War II that directly ties into your book. When the reader sees that and they want to see the rest of that fact, they click it. Not only does it give them the fact, it engages them, but it sells them on the book and your story. So that's one of the formats I'm going to be thinking about as we go further in this year. So the other thing I want to do is I collected some feedback from authors who have taken part so far, and they had some questions. So I want to answer some of those questions over video as well. And there are links. If I don't add your question, if I don't answer your question, you can put them into, you can hit reply and let me know the question and I'll answer you, or you can add it to the anonymized list and I'll answer it in the next email. So the first impression is, why did the impressions change from day to day? So this could be a few things. The first one is we had a bad bug in January where some books were getting way more impressions than others. And so we fixed that toward the middle of January. So some books that might have had a ton of impressions and some a little suddenly equalized out because we had some technical challenge there with caching and some other stuff, long story, but that is fixed now. The second possible to keep in mind is you are sharing all the Shepherd traffic with other members. So if we have 25 book ads running and then 50, it's going to split the ads over less, and that's going to make you adjust. The more distant one is if we get a big surge in traffic to one specific page that your book is the best match for, that can amp up your impressions for a while. This does happen from time to time. Like last month, we had a couple book lists go pretty viral, and the book ads that appeared on those got big spikes for a few days. Usually that doesn't last much longer than a few days though. Okay, second question that I got a lot was, where can I find the ads? That, like I said, make sure you read the 4Authors webpage on this feature because it explains that in detail and it does a video walkthrough. But the ads are based on similar authors, genres, and topics, and they are on the bookshelf pages on Shepherd. They are on the book recommendation list. They're in the books like pages, and they are on the book pages. So just browse Shepherd and look in the ad spots. They're a different color and they say new book alert and they have a clear sponsored on them to make sure it's clear they're an ad. So yeah, you should be able to find them, but hit reply and email me if you're having trouble finding them, because they should be very easy to see. One of the third question I got was somebody mentioning the stats are not aggregated. Just make sure you scroll to the very bottom. There's a total line on the bottom that aggregates all of them. Number 4, somebody said it didn't lead to any sales. Just to remind you, I don't have access to sales data that is dependable or useful. So my entire focus is on driving readers' interest. That's it. So I'm just trying to get readers in front of you and then trying to get them to click to the bookstore. Those are like my success measurements, is I purely look at how many clicks are going to the bookstore. Let's see. The next question is, the advantage of Shepherd over other ad campaigns ought to be targeting, but the click-through rate did not seem to bear this out. This is a great question. So I just described this, a lot above, but I think it's a mixture that we are going a lot broader with this Book Boost ad, because we're not only going for your small niche, we're going all the way out to fiction or nonfiction. And that is, obviously readers are going to click a lot less over here. One example is we had I'll kind of change some of the details, but we had a book that was on ancient Egypt. Now, of course, this book is going to do great when somebody's looking up ancient Egypt. Of course, if it's nonfiction or fiction, that's going to make a huge impact. But then we were also advertising that book on things like ancient Rome. That's going to get okay click through, though there's a good chance people might be meshed over. We go a little broader and we go out to history. How many people looking for a history book are also interested in ancient Egypt? That's a little bit, much more distant. So we've gone pretty broad here, and I'll have to think about if that's good or not. It kind of gets you in front of more people, but it's going to way lower the CTR rate. Let's see. One person said, I was disappointed in how few people were inspired to actually click through. And man, it's a hard one. Marketing a book is very difficult when the person doesn't already know you. It's a battle. I've already talked about kind of my thoughts on how we could improve that. And I just want to stress, this is why our book recommend pages are so powerful, and doing that list. we routinely see lists that have a 20 to 30% CTR rate to the promoted book by the author. Now, it's a much lower number is the thing, because if you do a list like the best books about ancient Egypt that will keep you riveted, that list is going to attract exactly the right people for your book. It shows off your personality, expertise, and it gets them interested in it. An ad is a much different ballgame. An ad is, it's like online dating. You basically can swipe left or right with no effort. You can ignore it with no effort. That ad really has to stand out and grab people. That's a lot easier when it's really focused. It gets a lot harder as it gets more broad. But this is the challenge that we are trying to work on at Shepherd. It's a lot about, it's what I think about each day is how can we engage readers in cool ways, like the book recommendation list, and use that to sell a book. This book ad is piggybacking off of some of that, but we're also going very broad. So you can hit reply and we'll talk more about that. Another question, number 7, was I would like the chance to repost the book. I'd also like the chance to feature past books. So yeah, that's totally fine. This is a book boost program. It's for any book you have. The only limit is we do currently give 1 credit per year of membership. I might be changing that. I need to think about that some more and how that affects everybody. Email me if questions, if you have thoughts there. I am thinking about splitting the book boost program to possibly be persistent as a persistent award for members, and then also do a separate new book launch, in which case we'd have to finish more of some aspects of the site around new books so that we can then feature new books there with more of a burst model rather than persistent exposure for the book boost program. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Number 8, question 8, I wish we could see if any purchases were made. Me too. I mean, this is one of the most crazy things that I never expected to run into in the book, is that authors don't know how many they're selling in real time. I don't understand that exactly, is why Amazon doesn't give you an interface. Even if your publisher is the one managing it, they should give you an interface. So that's very frustrating for me. Any other industry, you can make links, you can track ROI. I mean, that's how the only way you can run advertising and know if the costs are there. This market's kind of insane in that. Amazon does have a beta program out that kind of does this. I've interviewed a few authors who are using it. They tell me it's only about 60% accurate. I don't know what that means. That'd be very weird. So yeah, I wish I knew where sales were too. On the affiliate side, I get no good data, and it's only good for 24 or 48 hours. And my test has been rather poor. We figure we're losing at least half the data or more. So it's not something I can use. I have to just focus on how can I get readers in front of the book and how many can I get to click to the bookstore. I've had to make that's my measure of success. So yeah, I hope I covered all the questions. If I didn't, please hit reply and ask me. There's also a link in this email every month to an anonymous forum where you can ask an anonymous question. You can ask me anything. Happy to answer anything. There's nothing that scares me. Yeah, I hope that helps, and we will continue tweaking this, and let me know what you think.